All right, we're here today on MarketSeeds.com with Dr. Dennis Cadet. He's a research scientist from the Lethbridge Research Centre for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And thanks for joining us today, Dennis. And so, Dennis, a couple questions that popped up during last growing season surrounding wheat and some of the diseases in wheat were quite a big issue, specifically with regard to ergot and rust. And I guess those are kind of some of the questions we have today. So we'll start with ergot, I guess. What is it and where did it come from, and kind of what's the history on it?
Well, ergot has been around. It's an ancient disease, so it's been around for thousands of years, I guess, in terms of modern agriculture. But it basically it's a fungus disease, and it produces the characteristic ergot bodies, those black bodies that occur in the flowering stage and in the heads. And that, during harvest, those black bodies generally fall to the ground, and the wind will knock them out. And once on the ground, then those bodies are there to infect the next year's crop. Okay, so that's how it gets into your field. Now, how does it get into the crop? Well, usually what happens is that grasses growing along the roadsides or in your headlands of the fields, if they're allowed to flower, they'll eventually, over time, they'll start being infected with these bodies, these ergot bodies. And at that stage, once you start seeing a lot of ergot bodies in your roadside dishes and your headlands, then those spores, the fungus, is available and ready to move into your crop, which is cereal crops. Yes.
So I guess you've kind of answered the question a bit, but in terms of what causes it, what would lead to a major ergot infestation?
Well, then once it gets into the soil, then it produces little mushrooms, and those little mushrooms are usually being produced at the time that the plant is flowering. Okay, so those the little mushrooms will produce spores as they do, and those spores will float up and infect the flowering crop. Okay, now the key to the susceptibility of the crop is related to stage, because it's only susceptible to the fungus during flowering, and it's only susceptible if the flowers are open. Now, in an average wheat crop, your flowers don't open at all, okay, in an average year. So we frequently we can go several years without ever seeing it. But in certain years, the high humidity, a lot of rain and humidity around flowering causes the flowers to remain open. And when the flowers remain open and these fungal spores are floating up on the crop canopy, then sure as shooting, you will get the spores landing on the flowers, and that's when you get infection.
Okay. So as growers, what can we do to manage it then to try and reduce the infection?
Well, unfortunately, ergot is a disease to which we don't have any resistance in our crops. Okay. Certainly, rye and fall rye are the most susceptible because they're open pollinated, so their flowers stay open a lot longer. Triticale is also quite susceptible because its flowers remain open. Wheat is generally not that susceptible because it's a self-pollinated crop, so those flowers stay closed. But under conditions of high humidity, then you're going to get infections, especially during flowering. Now, so the other way to manage it is to make sure you try and reduce the number of sclerotia, those bodies, those black bodies, in the field. One way you can do that is because they come in on grasses in the roadside dishes and the headlands, you keep those mowed, then you'll never, if they don't produce heads, then they will never produce sclerotia. Okay, So that's an important part of the control.
So in terms of the seed that we're using, if there's ergot in the seed, will that have any impact? Obviously, with sowing a crop, you're pushing the ergot bodies that would be in the seed below the soil surface. Are they going to have the same impact as those that are sitting on the soil surface?
Not in that current year. As long as they're buried, of course, you won't see the mushrooms and whatnot. But eventually, with tillage and just even on a no-till system, those things do come up to the surface, and they'll eventually can cause problems. So the first thing is try to avoid contaminating your field too badly. And once your field is contaminated, of course, rotations. Obviously, wheat, barley, rye, triticale, and grasses are susceptible to this disease. So certainly rotating out of it to pulses, to canola, to anything that any dicot, any broadleaf crop is a good thing, because A, it won't be getting infected, and B, those sclerotia will be gradually be destroyed over time in the soil.
And you mentioned it before, but there's no rating system for varieties. All varieties are equally susceptible.
I would say that all varieties are equally susceptible, yes.
Okay. Another disease that's gained a lot of excitement, if you want to use that as the right term, over the last year was rust, specifically in southern Alberta. What can you tell us about rust? What different types are out there and in Western Canada that we should be worried about?
Well, stripe rust is the one that we've encountered for 2 times in the last 5 years. We've had major epidemics in southern Alberta, and in both years those epidemics have stretched into Saskatchewan and into central Saskatchewan. So consequently, it is what I refer to a new and emerging disease. And the problem with stripe rust is that if it overwinters in southern Alberta, then it gets an earlier start in the growing season. Of course, it overwinters it has to overwinter on live tissue. So by nature, it has to overwinter on winter wheat or a winter crop, obviously. And so, if it overwinters, then in the spring it starts to build up much more rapidly under those cool, wet conditions which it likes. And under those conditions, you can have a roaring epidemic in your winter wheat, and that epidemic will move to your spring wheat crops too.
So how do we know year to year whether or not we're going to have a problem? Like, it's moisture related, and like you say, but is there anything else as far as overwintering that we should be aware of?
Definitely in deep snow years where the snow stays all winter, that helps insulate the crop. And normally the low temperatures that we get in southern Alberta are sufficient to kill the fungus. So normally we don't get overwintering. But with the milder winters that we've been seeing in the last decade or so, coupled with a deeper, more persistent snow, that insulates the crop, and that reduces with the winter kill. And again, if it overwinters, then we have a problem the next year.
So if we know we're going to have it, or if we identify it, say, the year prior, what are some strategies we can do to manage the disease using best practices and that sort of thing?
Well, it's unlike ergot, there is good news. Many of our spring wheats have very good resistance, and certainly we'll have the lists available on your website so that producers can select those varieties so they've got a control measure before they actually put the crop in the ground. Once in the ground, there are fungicides available. So if you're monitoring your crop and you're seeing a lot of stripe rust building up in your crop, then you should be looking at a fungicide spray to protect your yield. And remember that under other research from the United States and elsewhere have shown us that around the heading, the boot, the flowering, and the heading stages are the best for applying fungicides, because then you're likely to get the best return for your dollar.
Great. Well, thank you, Dennis. For more information, Dennis can be reached at dennis.gaudette@agr.gc.ca, or, of course, by phone via the Lethbridge Research Station.
And we'll be happy to give you the information that you need.
Great. Thank you again, Dennis.